King's Day. Louis XIV of France by Aliki. Louis XIV was every inch a king. He wore the curliest wigs, the richest robes, the rarest jewels, and the fanciest shoes in all of France. What might a day in the life of such a magnificent king be like? Louis loved ceremony, and he hated surprises. His entire day was planned, from the minute he opened his eyes in the morning until he lay his head down on a royal pillow at night. There was a special getting-up ritual, the lever, when Louis's favorite courtiers handed him his clothing one piece at a time. At night, the steps were reversed for the coucher, the going-to-bed ceremony. Louis's every move was an event. When he ate his meals, there was always servants in attendance, and perhaps an honored guest or two. Sometimes the public was allowed to watch the king while he dined. Even an afternoon walk was a grand occasion. Accompanied by his courtiers, Louis would stroll through the vast gardens of Versailles, admiring the 4 million tulips and 2,000 orange trees planted there. Whether for flowers or clothing or food, Louis spared no expense. Aliki takes us back to the 17th century France to witness a day in the life of the splendid Sun King, who was not only a pampered and extravagant monarch, but also a brilliant ruler who, during his long reign, brought glory to France and its people. Louis XIV was every inch a king. He wore the curliest wigs, the richest robes, the rarest jewels, and the fanciest shoes in all of France. Louis lived in glory in many big palaces. The biggest of all was the Palace of Versailles. Versailles was as spectacular as its king. It was surrounded by endless gardens, parks, lakes, and fountains. It housed the king, his queen, his mistresses, all of his children, a swarm of relatives, and 10,000 servants and courtiers who fought for the honor of serving him. And serve they did, for Louis's every move was an event, whether he was away on a visit or on the battlefield, or at home in his palace. Courtiers attended him. They performed even the smallest task to win the king's favor and followed him wherever he went. Preparations for the king's day began early in the morning before he woke. There were no surprises, for Louis liked routine as much as he liked ceremony. His lever, his levier, his getting-up ritual was planned in every detail, and the luckiest courtiers were chosen to witness the whole affair. King's levier. The king slept, covers pulled down, windows open. He liked fresh air. At 7 o'clock, the first valet de chambre, who slept in a corner of the royal bedchamber, folded up his own bed and prepared for the first big event of the day. The royal faggot-bearers lit the fire. The royal watchmaker wound the royal clock. The royal wig-maker brought in king's dressing wig and morning wig. There were hundreds more in the royal wig room. At the stroke of 8, the first valet whispered, "Sire, it is time." The king's nurse rushed in to kiss him, just as she did every day of his life. The first physician and first surgeon followed to give Louis the royal back rub and change the royal shirt. It was changed many times a day. In the adjoining chamber, invited family and courtiers heard the news. The king was officially awake. They entered for the lever. Only a chosen few of men would assist, where Louis sipped his herb tea. The king was wigged and robed, He was shaved by the royal barber and washed his own face with scented alcohol. The royal chair carriers were honoured to empty the royal chamber pot. Dressing began with Louis discreetly shielded by his robe. First, a most favoured courtier handed Louis his pre-warmed lace shirt. Dressing continued with each separate garment, one by one. Finally, Louis was handed his handkerchief, his cordon bleu, the royal ribbon, and his sword, gloves, hat, and cane. Even on ordinary mornings, Louis wore embroidered clothes and shoes with diamond buckles. This was one of the occasions during the day when someone might ask. The king's lever lasted 2 hours. When it was finished, Louis was ready for his day. At 10 o'clock, he led a procession of the royal family, and his entire court to chapel for mass. This is one of the occasions during the day when someone might ask the king for a favor. Though he was feared, Louis spoke kindly, listened patiently, and had perfect manners. Louis was very pious. He prayed many times a day and expected others to do the same with him. From the balcony in the chapel where he knelt, he could see if anyone was missing. At 11 o'clock, he met with his council and gave the orders of the day. He discussed the progress of the kingdom, a new law, plans for a building, or the latest war. Then it was time for the next big event, dinner, for the king's stomach was grumbling. The king had dinner, his petit couvert, at 1 o'clock. When he dined in private, he ate alone. But he was never really alone. Servants and perhaps a guest or two stood around and waited and watched. Louis loved to eat. He had an enormous appetite and satisfied it well. It took 500 servants to prepare his meals, and Louis kept them busy. Sometimes he dined au public. Then any respectable person could journey to Versailles, file past the king, and see the spectacle for himself. The menu might be 4 soups, a stuffed pheasant, a partridge, a duck, some mutton, sliced ham, 3 salads, boiled eggs, a dish of pastry, fruit, and compotes. He ate all of it and washed it down with a diluted wine. Louis was an outdoor man. Every afternoon he changed his clothes and wig and went out into the fresh air, rain or shine. He went hunting or shooting or riding. He took outings in the countryside or strolled in the gardens of Versailles. It was his favorite time of day. After a rest, Louis dressed for the appartement, an open house he held it for his court. They heard a concert, watched a play or a dance, had refreshments and played games. Like it or not, everyone was expected to attend, for Louis wanted to know where everyone was. He never forgot that all of France belonged to him. Louis XIV was in control. Then, when everyone else was nodding with sleep, Louis had supper. The royal family ate with him at the Grand Couvert, while the court looked on. The Grand Couvert was even more excessive than the Petit Couvert. This time there were some 40 dishes served. No wonder Louis never ate between meals. When Louis reached his bedchamber at last, he was still not alone. It was time for the final event of the day, the coucher, his going-to-bed ceremony. By 1:30 a.m., the king was finally in his nightshirt, his nightcap, and his bed, and his weary courtiers were free to trudge up to theirs. The dawn of a new day was only a few hours away. The king's day was repeated again and again, for Louis the King was king a long 72 years. He was a brilliant ruler who controlled the rich and poor, noble and peasant, with absolute power. He knew just what he wanted for his kingdom and brought spectacular glory to it and to the 17th century in which he lived. Louis XIV of France was a born king.